everyone. I'm Michael Resendez, and today I want to talk about silence. Have you ever walked through your house at night, trying to make sure you don't wake up your kids or your spouse or even your parents? And as you open that door and start stepping through the house, all these sounds are just booming, louder than they've ever been before. That door creak is the creakiest thing on the planet. Maybe you grab a glass of water, and that tap roars like Niagara Falls. That in the silence, those ordinary sounds just become booming. Silence is a magnifier. Or, have you ever found that when you're supposed to be silent, it is often the hardest to be silent? Kids are a prime example of this, that in those moments where we ask them to be silent, they want to make all the more noise. Silence is uncomfortable. And this rings so very true, especially when it is not built into our society. Every single day we are surrounded by news flashes and notifications from our phones to our computers to the TVs. We're constantly surrounded by noise, from the honks in rush hour traffic to the radio in the car, or while we have our headphones in while we go for a run. We're always surrounded by noise. We're never in silence. Silence is uncomfortable. Silence is a magnifier. And I think this is so true with our relationship with God. That silence is important. That when we are in a prayerful silence, when we can be silent in our souls and in our lives, that we can better communicate with our God. The church often uses that famous passage in the Gospel of John of the woman at the well to communicate how prayer works, that it's a dialogue with our God. But something you'll often notice in that dialogue is that there's a great period of silence from the woman. That it's Jesus telling her that he is the life-giving water, that he knows everything about her, her deepest desires, her deepest wants. But silence is an important part of that conversation. It refreshes the woman. It lets her come into a real relationship with God. That is why at the end of the passage, we hear the woman who at first was shocked that a Jew was asking her for a glass of water, is now running back into Samaria saying, I have found the Messiah. Come and see. Is he the Christ? Silence reproduces authentic faith when we give it to God. That is why at the church's liturgy, at Mass and other sacraments, silence is always incorporated into it. Silence so that we may prepare ourselves for these great mysteries. Silence so that we may reflect on the words of the gospel and the readings, to see how God has worked in human past and how he wants to work and communicate again to us today. Silence so that we can adore the Christ who is becoming sacramentally present on the altar. Silence so that we may hear Christ and pray to him while and after we have received him in the Eucharist. Silence so that we may be refreshed by the gospel, by the good news of our Lord Jesus Christ, who wants to be with us, who reaches out to us. But so often in our daily lives, we are distracted from hearing the voice of God. We are distracted. We have all this noise blocking us from hearing where God is calling us to go, what God is calling us to be. Silence magnifies. Silence allows God's voice to boom like that creaky door. The silence we give to God, yes, is uncomfortable, but it is exactly in that uncomfortableness that Christ comes, speaking as that gentle shepherd who is offering us green pastures and living water. For we know that time with God is never wasted, that it is good for our souls and for the people around us. For when we have a relationship with God, we can give of ourselves better to the people around us. So today, may we come to reflect on the power, the magnitude, the uncomfortableness of silence. May we come to prayerfully rest in that uncomfortable silence. May we come to rest in the loving arms of our God, who wants to talk to us, who is reaching out to communicate with us. For surely, when we do, we will be at the source of the living water.